Getting custom manufactured parts can be a difficult task. Some local shops are great, but some require order minimums or just won't pick up the phone if you aren't a large company. That's where Xometry comes in. Xometry is trusted by engineers and designers at NASA, BMW, Bosch, and more. Simply upload the design file you want to be manufactured and boom! In a matter of seconds, you'll get an instant quote and access to dozens of manufacturing processes like CNC machining, sheet cutting and fabrication, 3D printing, injection molding, and more. Plus, you'll have plenty of delivery window options and prices available to suit your budget. Worry less and get the parts you need manufactured with Xometry so you can get back to building. Xometry, where big ideas are built.
Not a lot of engineers maybe think about those soft skills, but it does come in very useful, especially when you're talking up and down the hierarchical chain of a company.
Hello and welcome to another exciting episode of the Being an Engineer podcast. Today we're speaking with Tony Dedeo, who is a mechanical engineer with over 20 years of experience in operational strategic planning, manufacturing, quality management, supply chain, and team leadership. Tony has held positions throughout his career from consultant to director to VP as he has helped organizations drive improvement. Tony, thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Tell us a little bit about why you decided to become an engineer in the first place.
Originally I had no visions of becoming an engineer, to be quite honest. I had visions of going into sales. And so when I graduated college from Purdue University, I started with Chrysler out in Detroit there and started with their sales and service program. Unfortunately, in the 2000-2001 timeframe, there was a big hiring freeze. The automotive market had kind of taken a turn. And we had an internal job board that one of my friends was looking at and saw a plant vehicle engineering job back in my hometown in Illinois and said, "Hey, you're an engineer, right?" I said, "Oh, yeah." He said, "You should go apply for this." And so out of, just dumb luck, I applied and they brought me in. And so that was my first real foray into, vertically integrated manufacturing at an automotive assembly plant out in Belvidere, Illinois there, which is still running today.
That's great. So that set the trajectory for where you are now. And maybe you can give us 60-second overview of some of the things that you've done throughout your career. And then after that, talk a little bit about how you were able to grow into this leadership position now, because you have kind of a pretty high level leadership position. And I think a lot of engineers listening to this would be super interested to hear about what were some of the most influential factors that allowed you to achieve that position?
Sure. Let's see. Some of the things that I've done throughout my career, obviously as an engineer focused on, whenever you're in a manufacturing setting, quality and cost are the number two targets. So a lot of most of my background has been focused in improving quality and reducing cost. And sometimes those go hand in hand. If you've got quality problems that are costing the company money, you go solve those. You do both. There's a lot of cost prevention that was in hand as well. I think as I look back on my career and the things that I've done, I never said no to an opportunity. When opportunity knocked or somebody asked, "Hey, do you want to be part of this program? Do you want to take this training?" I always said yes. And I thought that as I reflect back, those were things that built out a toolkit, I would say, whether it be, going through the green belt, black belt programs, doing SolidWorks training, going through, the company's, supervision and managerial training programs, conflict resolution, all those things, I think you got to be open to, regardless if you want to be or stay in the engineering track or move into the managerial roles. Obviously those soft skills and even those technical skills you'll keep with you, throughout your lifetime. And I think having a backbone in those early years really set, me up for success, I would say. Not only that, but you start building different relationships with the people that you're going to meet in these training groups or cohorts. And it does take you out of, I'll say, your comfort zone quite a bit. Beyond that, you can look at my resume. I bounced around industry quite a bit. Automotive, DoD, missile defense, heavy industrial, and then medical device and life science. So there's not much that I can't say that I've not seen, whether it be software all related. There's really nothing that I haven't touched or experienced in my, I guess it's going on 24 years now. Beyond that, I think getting into a leadership role, I saw other leaders that I admired and would try to emulate how they handle their situations themselves, how they manage themselves or different groups and situations. I think you learn a lot from that. I think you learn a lot from seeing other people not doing it as well. And you can spot those, I'll say, missteps. Or when those opportunities come around, you choose the better path. And I think that is something that, as people grow in their career, they really need to be conscious of it. They've got books out there on emotional intelligence that I've read, I've taken the test, and it does help. So I know, not a lot of engineers maybe think about those soft skills on how to deal with those types of situations, but it does come in very, very useful, especially when you're talking up and down the hierarchical chain of a company. You learn quickly how to respond, discuss different situations depending on who you're talking to. So that's been highly beneficial.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more in regards to the soft skills. They're really critical. Have you ever felt, especially as you've grown into higher and higher leadership positions, have you ever felt a sense of imposter syndrome? Or have you always felt like 100%, I got this, confident, no problem?
I would say 100% of the time it's imposter syndrome. I think that's absolutely the case. If you're not nervous going into a new situation, maybe you're not challenging yourself enough. I think the things, I've transferred industries and jobs and moved states. There's always that feeling. But even when you're with a company for, say, 5 years, and you take a new role, or again, you're going into, they're pulling you into a different uncomfortable situation. I think the best thing I've been able to do is ask questions. Try not to be the smartest person in the room, even though there's times to speak and do that. But take a humbler approach and ask questions when you're really trying to figure this new thing out. Because people like that. Because then you're more approachable. If you're asking questions, you're not telling somebody what to do. And you're just having a discussion. And I think that really helps alleviate the anxiety of the imposter syndrome, which you're going to have every day, or at least I do, I guess. I can find opportunities to have that about.
Yeah, you and me both. I feel that all the time. And I don't think it's ever something that you get over. Like you said, as long as you're putting yourself into new and challenging roles and positions, you're going to feel that. And maybe that's even a good thing, right? It's an indication that you're stretching yourself and growing.
Oh, absolutely.
So you're working at a company called NanoStrings right now. Can you tell us just quick overview. What do you do there? And then that's I don't know if you would call it medical devices or more like life sciences, biosciences company, but what kind of trends are you seeing in like the healthcare, medical device, biosciences realm these days?
Yeah, I can. So I just started with NanoString a couple months ago. I'm their senior director of manufacturing. In They're a life science company. They focus on life science tools to basically map the genome of the body. I want to say I know everything about it, and I don't. But what we do is we make reagents and instrumentation that go hand in hand that find different biomarkers in proteins or RNA that give researchers the ability to discover more about what's going on in the body, to combat things and develop drugs for things like cancer. And that's the big market right now, is cancer research. And so it's a research use company. They are a globally distributed worldwide company. But that's essentially what this particular company does. And I've worked for a company called Raresight prior to this. That was my first foray into the biologics. And I was the VP of operations there. In between, I was with a company called Magnolia Medical, single-use blood diversion device that was very useful in reducing sepsis misdiagnosis for false positives to almost zero. So a single-use gamma and or EO sterilized type device. I guess the trends that I'm seeing in the field at large are, I can speak to both in some regard. There's a lot of outsourcing, a lot of contract manufacturing that occurs. And then on the medical device field specifically, it's all moving toward single use due to cost and due to the need not to have to sterilize it within the hospital. There's lead time, it's costly. People don't want to do it. And the capital equipment's expensive. But with that, we've seen large influxes of single-use devices now coming on the market, and it's clogging up the sterilization cycles. There's really only two companies that do this, Steris and Sterigenics, and they're really at capacity as far as ethylene oxide sterilization and shortly gamma. They're just not building many plants. There's been a lot of regulation with the EPA, who does not like EO gas, which is value, obviously a value, but they're running into very long lead times and increased costs on those two fronts. And so there's companies that are trying to figure out, okay, how can we better design this device to either not use EO or to use gamma or one or the other. These sites just they're not large enough, and they're not building more of them right now. So, and if they are, it's going to take quite a few years to get it up and validated. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. You're also seeing new trends in bedside diagnostics, point of use care. POCUS is a big term out there for point of use care. The bedside diagnostics, if you can get a quick blood draw that can give you information within 10, 15 minutes for directionally correct diagnosis. These are game changers compared to taking a full blood draw, sending it to a lab, and then having to wait, potentially 24, 36 hours, at which time you could get quite a bit sicker in that time. And so there's just a lot of interest in those particular fields, the point of use care and the bedside diagnostics.
That's very insightful. A lot of answers that I hadn't actually heard before. Outsourcing a lot, the point of use care, single-use devices. Have you seen a growth in reprocessing companies? I know that's becoming big business in medical devices these days. And if you're seeing a lot more single-use device manufacturing out there, I wonder if there's going to be a correlation with the growth of reprocessing, medical device reprocessing companies.
I haven't had a lot of experience in the reprocessing area, so I'll have to take your word for it. But yeah, I think, by and large, the hospitals, the clinics, they're all under a lot of cost constraints right now. The nursing staff, COVID really took its turn with the nursing staff and the help. It really overstressed the system in total. A lot of people quit. They have not been getting paid well for many years. And what we started to see, at least, was a lot of the traveling nurses were coming in and to replace a lot of the attrition that they were facing. And so I don't know if I'm answering your question or providing additional commentary on the side, but as far as reprocessing, I would have to say that with the changes in the clinic and hospital system, I could see that becoming a bigger market, just because a lot of these people probably don't know how to do it.
Very interesting. Okay. Well, let me change direction just a little bit here. Let's talk about engineers that you've worked with to date and teams of engineers. What are some of the traits or habits or behaviors that you've seen in the best engineers? And then if it's a different answer, in the best engineering teams?
The best engineers I've worked with are multidisciplined. And what I mean by that is, let's say you want to be the best, research and design, or just a designer, be it, and I'll just stick to hardware because that's what I'm most familiar with. The best ones I've ever worked with, or have seen them design things very well, they cut their teeth in quality and or manufacturing engineering, where they were solving the problems of poor design. And so when you get that frontline experience and then you get to go do these designs, you carry with you all those trials and tribulations of redesigning that you had to do. And so these designs that they come up with are much better. They're more cost effective. They really take to consideration how are the users, how are the assemblers going to put this on? How are they going to service it? Is this going to cause a quality issue? Is there a stack up issue here? And it's not to say that designers that automatically go in don't have that in mind, but they also don't have the scars of having to get yelled at maybe 3 or 4 times a week from unhappy assemblers or line managers or quality people that need a better design to satisfy the requirements.
Yeah. Going along with that, this might be a pretty similar answer, but what are the most valuable technical skills that you see in your engineers, and are you seeing enough of them these days, or do you think that there's a dearth of these skills?
Geez, I think it depends. I worked with very well-rounded individuals, and I start to see engineers kind of in 2 camps of skill set. One being, and I'll just speak to the medical device side of things, engineers that are really good with documentation and process and technical writing, and asking questions. And then on the other side of it is the actual design work, or IQ, PQs, or, designing a fixture for assembly. You see that more in when your company does a lot of outsourcing, where you have engineers that are just reviewing and approving documentation and doing technical writing versus being, on the front lines. So I've seen that dichotomy a bit over the past, 10 years, where you've got titled and well-paid engineers, but they're only doing, in my mind, half of the job. So that's what I've seen. And so I think it goes back to some earlier comments that some of these engineers really have to consider the experience that they're getting, and then what does it mean to grow? And if you're not going to get that other half of that experience within that company that you're with, you may have to have some introspection on what your next steps are.
What I've seen in the companies where I've worked is that the engineers largely want to design new products and do not love doing the documentation. Does that jive with your experience?
I can't say that that's a new thing. That's not a new thing. It's that's just the nature of being an engineer. Nobody wants to do documentation. But the documentation is the output of the design, right? So that's a hard pill to swallow for engineers, but it's a must swallow.
There's a old engineer that I worked with a while back, and he used to say that documentation is the output of engineering. And,
absolutely.
It's true. It's just part of what it is to be an engineer.
It's tough. And, it's also tough for engineers that are on the sustaining aspect of that. Right. So, you're not always getting to design the new whiz bang thing. There's still legacy products out there that need to get supported, loved, and, kept on the market. And, you've got, some people that really love the sustaining and people that only want to do the research and new things. So I think there's struggles there, I think, with a bunch of engineers that have to either do one or both.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let me take a very short break here and share with everyone that our company, Pipeline Design and Engineering, develops new and innovative manufacturing processes for complex products, then implements them into manual fixtures or fully automated machines to dramatically reduce production costs and improve production yields for OEMs. And today we're speaking with Tony Dedeo. Tony, what are a few of your biggest challenges as an engineering leader?
In recent past, it's when I've had some very competent engineers. Quite honestly, some of these engineers, it's sometimes hard to keep them motivated. If they're very highly competent and efficient, it can be hard to keep them fed with things that will keep them interested and motivated. There's not always money to go do the next generation thing. And I think, that's been certainly hard for me. And that's when I start to look for other opportunities within the company that they might be able to provide value. And that can take a variety of different things. But if that particular person wants to lead a team or become a manager or, or maybe just go out in the field and see what the customers are doing, how are they using our product? Are there features, feedback that we need to bring back that we're not getting otherwise? So I think that's been my personal struggle is there's going to be times that an engineer is going to look around and say, is this it? And it's up to the manager to keep them fed, and it's going to take some creativity to do that.
I've had similar experiences, and I think that's a really insightful piece of information there. I think in maybe certain industries or maybe at certain levels of an industry, there's a tendency for some workers to look for excuses to maybe not work, right? To sit back and twiddle their thumbs for a little bit. In my experience, that has not been the case with engineers. They want to be challenged. They want to be really busy. And they, like you said, they start getting bored when they're not busy. And when they get bored, they're going to start looking for other opportunities. So to keep really talented engineers on your team, you need to keep those challenges coming all the time. What have been some ways that you've addressed that? You mentioned looking for other places in the company for opportunities. Are there any pro tips or creative solutions that you've hit upon?
Pro tips, I wouldn't call them pro tips, but things that I will engage them on is, I will get them involved with just other facets of the company, whether, so if it's supply chain, are there due diligence trips that we can put them on? Go on an audit with a QA person to a supplier, or just go visit the supplier base, and see see if there's anything we can glean from them as far as, our own designs. Or maybe there's things that we can do a lean event on. I've sent engineers out with clinical staff, to go to hospitals and clinics, just to see how our products are really used in the field and see what kind of struggles they're having. And all those kind of activities, while it's not, sustained over time, they are sprinkled throughout the year where, they do look forward to it. They do see value in it, in those potential, sloughs of workload. Being in operations, I can always poke at something and say, hey, this needs to be cheaper, go design something new. Or, hey, this whole thing isn't great, go design something new. But sometimes there's just not funds to go do that work. And so, I think my only tip is, pull them out of the engineering box and get them experience in the other departments. Maybe there's QA work, or maybe there's some finance work. There's always something to round out an engineer. And if they certainly want to be a manager, they're going to have to step out of that comfort zone and get experience and firsthand experience in other departments. So that's what I would do with them.
Yeah, I really like that. We've done similar things where, all of our work is project work. And so we do a lot of quoting on these different projects. And historically, there have just been 2 or 3 of us that have done all of the quoting. And more recently, the past 6 or 12 months, we've started pulling the engineers in to help with all of that quoting. And it's been terrific. Not only does it teach them a new skill, but it lightens the burden for the 2 or 3 of us who were doing all of that quoting in the past. So that's been a really great way to provide engineers with something else, a new challenge, right, to learn about.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and it's probably fun for them for a little while.
Yeah, that's the key word, right? For a little while. Everything, right, is for a little while. Then you get good at it, and then it gets boring, and then it's on to whatever the next thing is. So we talked about some of the challenges that you face as an engineering leader. How about for the medical device industry as a whole? What are some of the biggest challenges that you see facing the medical device industry?
We talked about the sterilization, bottlenecks. I think in the macroeconomic and the political environment that we're in, I think companies are going to have struggles in the OUS market, especially, some of these conflict areas, I'm just going to call them. It's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next, 12 months here. Luckily, most of the things that I'm involved in, we don't have, a lot of OUS componentry, but I think that's going to be very interesting to see what happens. And I hope everything works out, but I think there's going to be some next level supply chain issues going on. beyond that, I think, we've got interest rates that have gone through the roof, or at least, for people who have been used to it, 2-3% interest rate, the cost of manufacturing, that just gets passed on to the customer. And so that's really hard to keep your, purchase price variance where you want it, and your gross margin where you need it. So I think there's a lot of macroeconomic and political environment issues that are going on that are going to make it very hard for some of these upstarts, and maybe even some of the well-seasoned, 50-year companies. There's going to be trials and tribulations here, I think.
Yeah, belts are getting tighter and tighter, it seems like, these days. Well, so given that there are some challenges, there are always some challenges, but what's a tool that, if it existed, would help your team perform dramatically better, 10 times better than they do today, whether that's better quality or faster or whatever it might be? And this tool, it's a magic wand kind of thing. So this can go outside the limits of known physics even. But what's something that you think if it existed, if you had it, your team would just be, 10 times more productive, 100 times more productive?
I think it's not a widget, but it's a system. There is not an ERP system out there that I've seen or liked, or anybody has seen or liked. They just compromise and then deal with. But, these business processes is what bogs everybody down. And it's that administrative work that, quite honestly, the engineers don't want to do. And so if we can speed that up, that's amazing. And so if there was a company, and it doesn't exist today, even though some may claim they have it, but it doesn't work, and a very well integrated ERP, PDM, EQMS, MES system with backbones of Power BI and, AI tools, something that is the Apple interface, I would say, of, a manufacturing company. That would be amazing. Something that just works and is super easy to use and easy to set up, and that would be amazing, I think. And so if somebody has designed that, I just haven't seen it.
That does sound incredible.
Yeah, that's the golden egg of efficiency as far as I'm concerned. But I think what I've seen is companies create something and then they buy other companies or different applications, and then none of them really work together. It's just kind of hodgepodge together, and then it's just a marketing job to get everybody sold on whatever they kludged together. And so that's what I think frustrates everybody right now is, hey, we've got all these things to go do, and yet I'm stuck doing 4 hours of admin work because these systems are terrible.
Yeah, that is frustrating. Well, let's say that you had unlimited resources, whether it's time, people, money, whatever. What's the one thing that you would do for your company that you think would have the most significant impact on achieving its business goals?Maybe it's the same answer.
I would honestly, if I had unlimited resource, time, and money, I'd start vertically integrating everything. It's kind of that Toyota model where they hold their supply chain very close and they have a lot of control over it, but they are able to control all the costs there as well. If there's very few companies that do it. But then if you are able to do it and be successful, you could also open up a different, business opportunity to do contract manufacturing for others. So, you look at the bicycle company Giant, they make really good bikes, but they also make everybody else's bikes. Not a lot of people know that, but there's a business model there that I've seen work.
Great answer. How do you see the medical device industry changing over the next 5 years?
It's a good question. I really don't know outside of, some of the topics that we touched on. We'll see what happens, with the political and economic environment we're in. But I do see the medical device going more continuing, I'll say, single use, as well as getting into more faster diagnostics. I think the diagnostics have come quite a long way, but I don't think we're near what it can be yet. And I think that's just going to take investment. So we'll see. I'm excited to see what the future holds in that arena. But those are $1 million programs that you got to start seed funding. And so I just don't see a lot of people doing that right now with the economic situation we're in.
Sure. Yeah. Well, just one or two more questions and we'll wrap things up here. Specifically within the context of your role as an engineer, what is one thing that frustrates you? And then conversely, what's one thing that brings you joy?
In context of an engineer, I think I kind of touched on it with the burden of admin, outside of the business processes and things of that nature. I think an engineer is always going to be frustrated with, I'll say, other engineers. And what I mean by that is, you're buying something from some other company, and invariably it's going to be, you're going to have problems. You're going to have something wrong. And so you've got one engineer catching another engineer, doing something wrong. So, I think that just goes with the territory of being in business and specifically manufacturing and design. So, those are two that I see it every day. The other thing, honestly, that brings me joy is seeing, people getting excited over things they've done well, or figured out. It's quite something to give somebody a task and then see them figure it out for themselves, or ask the right questions, or go seek the information, or go learn or take a class and get the job done. And it's pretty awesome to see people grow in that context. Not only technically, but, especially on those soft skills that we talked about. I've seen engineers, become very astute business people, and they become managers and directors. And it's really awesome to see that, some of those people happen to work for me. And so that's what brings me joy. That's why I go to work, every day is, it's not necessarily only the company and the fact that they're paying me to do that, but it's, it really is seeing the people grow, and start to lead and take charge and, work me out of a job or work me into my next thing. And so that's what excites me every day.
I certainly echo that. We have a couple of philosophies. We call them our tenets at Pipeline that are hung on a wall, and two of them are persistence beats brilliance and be respectfully aggressive. And I was listening to one of our very young engineers the other day on a phone call with a vendor, and it was clear from his side of the conversation that he wasn't getting what he wanted. And he kept pushing respectfully. He was looking for different avenues. And can I talk with this person there? No. Well, what if we did that? And I was just so proud of him, to hear the persistence and the respectful aggressiveness that he took as he talked with his vendor. It was just really cool seeing the growth, like you said.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing to see it.
Yeah. All right, Tony. Well, this has been such a terrific conversation. Thank you again for taking some of your time and sharing your wisdom and insight with the community here at the Being an Engineer podcast. How can people get in touch with you?
LinkedIn is the best way. My last name's spelled Dedeo, and it's pretty easy to find me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Tony.
Thank you for having me.
I'm Aaron Monker, founder of Pipeline Design and Engineering. If you liked what you heard today, please share the episode. To learn how your team can leverage our team's expertise developing turnkey equipment, custom fixtures and automated machines, and with product design, visit us at teampipeline.us. Thanks for listening.